Well, it's here. The moment everyone's been dreading, and some have been quietly preparing for, has finally arrived. The Megabill, an 800-page legislative behemoth, has been signed into law. It landed with a thud, both literally and figuratively, on the desks of lawmakers and citizens alike. After weeks of backroom deals, late-night negotiations, and public posturing, it passed by the slimmest of margins, with Vice President J.D. Vance casting the tie-breaking vote that tipped the scales. Supporters call it a triumph for the economy and border security, touting it as a bold step forward. But the fine print tells a very different story, one that's raising alarm bells across the country. This bill is a masterclass in misdirection, promising prosperity for all while engineering a massive upward transfer of wealth. The rich get richer, while working families are left to pick up the pieces. It talks about security, but funds policies that will create instability and fear in communities across the country. The promise of safety is overshadowed by the reality of increased anxiety and division. Democrats condemned it as a direct attack on the vulnerable, staging marathon speeches, and reading letters from those terrified of losing health care, food assistance, and education. Their voices echoed the fears of millions. Even a few Republicans broke ranks, unable to stomach the fiscal recklessness and cruelty. The divisions ran deep, exposing cracks within the party itself. Senator Tom Tillis announced he wouldn't seek re-election after voting against it, a rare act of protest in an era of party loyalty. His departure sent shockwaves through the Capitol. The result? A $4.5 trillion package that, according to the Congressional Budget Office, will add $3.3 trillion to the national deficit over the next decade. The numbers are staggering, and the consequences will be felt for years. We've just mortgaged our country's future for a solid gold bird feeder for the rich, and a bigger fence to keep the neighbors out. The symbolism couldn't be clearer. Over the next few scenes, we'll unpack who really wins from these tax cuts, the true cost of the border security push, and who's left behind by deep cuts to essential services. The stakes are higher than ever. Get comfortable. This is going to be a bumpy and frankly infuriating ride. The road ahead is uncertain, and the fallout is just beginning. The Megabill isn't just another law, it's a declaration of priorities. It's a statement about who matters and who doesn't in the halls of power. If you're not a corporation or a millionaire, you might want to check if your priorities made the cut. Spoiler, chances are they probably didn't. But we're here to break it all down for you. Let's start with the centerpiece, tax cuts. They're always sold as a win for everyone, a rising tide that lifts all boats. But when you look closer, the real story is in the details. The bill makes the 2017 tax cuts for individuals permanent, locking in changes that were supposed to expire. But who actually benefits from this move, and who's left behind? The lowest-income Americans get an average tax cut of about $150. A pat on the head, not a lifeline. For families living paycheck to paycheck, that's barely enough to cover a week's groceries or a utility bill. The middle class gets around $1,750. Helpful, but hardly transformative. It might mean a small vacation or a bit less stress at tax time, but it won't change anyone's future. Meanwhile, the top earners walk away with an average tax cut of nearly $11,000, a golden ticket to luxury. For them, it's a bonus that can go straight into investments, savings, or another luxury purchase. For every extra dollar going to a low-income family, a wealthy family gets about 73. The gap isn't just wide, it's a chasm, and it's only getting bigger. This isn't a rising tide, it's a tidal wave for the yachts, while everyone else gets swamped. The benefits are so lopsided, most Americans barely feel the ripple. The bill also raises the cap on the state and local tax deduction, a targeted giveaway to the wealthiest in high-tax states. It's a change that means more money stays in the pockets of those who already have the most. Supporters tout tax cuts for everyone, but the reality is a windfall for the rich, deepening inequality. The numbers don't lie. Wealth is concentrating at the very top. The promise was broad relief, but the reality is a highly concentrated benefit for the top. Most families see little change while the wealthy reap the rewards. It's a classic bait and switch, for everyone, whispered, mostly for the wealthy, written in the fine print. The real winners are hidden in the shadows of the legislation. The national debt balloons and the bill for this largesse will fall on everyone else. Future generations will be left to pick up the tab for today's giveaways. The Megabill's tax cuts are a masterclass in upward redistribution, money flowing from the many to the few, all under the banner of relief for all. To make the tax cuts for the wealthy more palatable to the public, the Megabill sprinkles in a few wins for workers. Small gestures designed to look like real progress. There's a new tax deduction for tips and overtime pay. On the surface, it sounds like a breakthrough. But most low-wage workers don't owe enough taxes to actually benefit from it. For many, it's a deduction that exists only on paper. It's a gesture that feels good but does little. A legislative thoughts and prayers for the working class, offering symbolic comfort instead of real change. The auto loan interest deduction? It mostly helps those buying expensive new cars, not the average worker scraping by with a used vehicle. The people who need help the most are left out of the equation. It subtly encourages more debt and rewards those with higher incomes, while those struggling to make ends meet see little relief. The $6,000 deduction for older adults is temporary and phases out for those earning over $75,000. A watered-down promise, not a real solution. For many seniors, it's a fleeting benefit that doesn't address their real financial worries. These provisions are the Trojan horse of the Megabill, shiny on the outside, hollow on the inside, designed to distract from who truly benefits. Politicians can claim they helped the little guy, while the real money flows elsewhere, quietly enriching those at the top. The working class gets crumbs, while the banquet is reserved for the wealthy. The gap between promise and reality grows wider. These populist measures are more about optics than impact, more about headlines than real help. The Megabill's message is clear: enjoy your crumbs while the feast goes on behind closed doors, out of sight and out of reach. The real winners are hidden in the fine print, their gains buried beneath layers of legal language. In the end, the working class is left with little more than empty promises and a lingering sense of being left behind. The Megabill's border security spending is biblical: $350 billion. That's more than the annual GDP of countries like Finland. $46 billion goes to expanding the border wall, a project whose effectiveness is still in question. Billions more fund high-tech surveillance, drones, and monitoring equipment, turning border communities into quasi-militarized zones. This isn't just about security, it's about building a fortress, both physical and digital. The price tag is astronomical, and the impact on civil liberties is profound. Critics argue this money could address root causes of migration or improve legal immigration, but instead, we're buying more steel and concrete. The Megabill invests in walls, not bridges, in enforcement, not opportunity. It's a statement of values, and the message is clear. The Megabill doesn't just fund walls, it supercharges the immigration detention and deportation machine. It increases detention capacity to 100,000 beds, a city's worth of people held in often inhumane conditions. 10,000 new ICE agents will mean more raids, more arrests, and more fear in immigrant communities. Families will be afraid to send kids to school or seek medical care, creating a shadow population vulnerable to exploitation. The immigration court system, already overwhelmed, will buckle under the weight of new cases. Asylum seekers will find it even harder to get a fair hearing. The bill prioritizes force over compassion, punishment over justice. The human cost will be measured in separated families and shattered lives. To pay for tax cuts and border walls, the Megabill takes a sledgehammer to the social safety net. $1.2 trillion in cuts target Medicaid and SNAP, programs that keep millions healthy and fed. New work requirements for Medicaid will kick millions off their insurance, punishing people for being poor or unlucky. SNAP cuts mean less food for children, seniors, and people with disabilities. States, already strapped for cash, will struggle to fill the gaps, leading to more hunger and hardship. Rural hospitals warn they may close, creating healthcare deserts. This isn't trimming fat, it's cutting into bone. The bill shifts resources from the vulnerable to the wealthy, deepening inequality. The Megabill's trade-off tax cuts for millionaires, hunger and hardship for everyone else. The Megabill also targets the future, making college harder and more expensive for young Americans. Pell Grant eligibility is tightened, shutting out thousands of low-income students. For those who qualify, grants cover less and less of rising tuition. Student loan relief programs are scaled back, making it harder for graduates to manage debt. Teachers, nurses, and social workers will face higher payments and longer debt. The result? More debt, less opportunity, and a generation told their dreams don't matter. Investing in education pays off for everyone. But this bill chooses short-term savings over long-term prosperity. The message is clear: the next generation is not a priority. The Megabill finds billions for new warships and a $25 billion missile defense system, even as it claims we can't afford to feed hungry children. Defense spending soars while investments in green energy are slashed. New taxes on renewable energy components make solar and wind less competitive, slowing the fight against climate change. Executive orders will make it even harder for clean energy projects to qualify for tax credits. The bill is a gift to fossil fuel interests, trading planetary health for short-term political gain. The priorities are clear: military might and fossil fuels over health, education, and the environment. In a moment demanding urgent climate action, the Megabill marches in the wrong direction. Our environmental future is being mortgaged for political favors. The Megabill is a monument to skewed priorities and fiscal recklessness. It orchestrates one of the largest upward transfers of wealth in modern history. The winners, the wealthy corporations and defense contractors. The losers, everyday Americans, those losing health insurance, food assistance, and access to education. The bill adds $3.3 trillion in new debt, a burden for generations. This isn't just policy, it's a moral reckoning. The consequences: more poverty, sickness, hunger, and inequality. The fight over this bill's impact is just beginning. The real cost will be measured in closed hospitals, longer food bank lines, and deferred dreams. The Megabill has passed, but the struggle for the nation's soul is far from over.